Hello everybody, this is Ken Rock here. For the first time ever, you will see the actual rock. That's right, people. As you can tell by the thing on my head, I've made a fancy hat. That's because we are coming back to Mr. Orange for some more evolution fun. See, Mr. Orange, I told you I'd be back.
This question was sent by our buddy Aiden from his iPhone, and he says, "Hello again, Aiden again, and I hope you can help me with this one question concerning beneficial mutations. While discussing fruit flies again, the evolutionist obviously avoided my points, which were simple to understand, and instead went on to speciation. But the evolutionist also replied, quote, based on what I did gather, novel traits that maintain in a gene pool that allow for survival are beneficial mutations. So, I understood everything else, but novel traits? What are novel traits? And what was the evolutionist trying to convey here? Is this even a beneficial mutation? Thank you and God bless."
So I can't speak for the person that you're talking about specifically, but when I think novel trait, I think small little add-ons or subtractions. If you watched the last video I did with Mr. Orange, you will know that I talked about a case in which somebody had grown a small tail. That's a novel trait. Now, I can't speak for the person that you're talking about, but that's what I would given it as an example. And as far as a definition, well, there you go, a small trait that's added on or something that's taken away.
Aiden, I'm happy to help as always. To begin with, I would ask your evolutionist friend what he means. As a general rule, it does no good to have to define his terms for him, for it leaves you open to arguing a point he didn't make.
That's a very admirable thing to do. If you're confused while having a debate or conversation, ask what the other person's meaning. Nothing wrong with that. It's definitely a lot better than just assuming that they're saying something and getting it wrong, or, as you're about to demonstrate, insulting them.
A lot of evolutionists, in my limited experience, are lazy and like to toss off facts with no context, assuming that the argument is being made but not actually making the argument.
Hi there. Don't mind the change in appearance. Now, to what you said, one way to just call everyone who believes in evolution lazy, that's certainly not a lazy thing to do on your part. And to the point, how does one make a point and not make an argument at the same time? Logic would dictate that if you bring up a point, you are in fact bringing up an argument. In which case, it is the person who you're having a discussion with job to either disprove that point or give into it. One of these two things generally has to happen.
I would prefer to settle one topic before moving on to another. Many people prefer to play debate than to have an intellectually honest conversation. And I think we're all guilty of this from time to time. The more immature an atheist is, the more they rely on this as a debate strategy. A lot of evolutionists, in my limited experience, are lazy.
I'm so glad you yourself are not immature yourself enough to call people lazy. So glad you're not.
To avoid acknowledging your points, or perhaps to simply shotgun you with so many different topics that they can pretend that you have no answers, because while you answered 501 of their questions or attacks, there was that one you failed to answer.
What if the one out of the 501 questions that you failed to answer completely ruins your point, though? You would think that would matter, but according to you, it doesn't.
I usually explain to them why they are not being honest and end the conversation. It helps to know the difference. If I had to guess, I'd say he's referring to the novel or unique traits that distinguish otherwise identical species of fruit flies. I mean, let's face it, those guys are pretty small and don't have all that many parts when compared to other larger and longer-lasting organisms. So while I don't know that I would accept these are different species, that's a semantic argument which is not to the point in this case.
You do remember we're talking about evolution, right? You see, the reason why I say that is because when one points out the difference in creatures and all that they're usually pointing out that this is very much could be the start of an evolutionary change that could make the creatures two different things. Evolution doesn't happen within one generation. That's ridiculous, and no one has ever made that claim, Mr. Orange. So, if you can try and stick with what's actually being said, like you yourself said earlier, that'd be great.
Case. In terms of natural selection, if there are variations in a population, and some of those variations make it easier to survive, whereas other variations make it harder to survive. Thus, some live and pass on those traits, and others die, and those traits hypothetically disappear from the species or gene pool or population or whatever you want to call it. But as to his comment, novel traits that maintain in a gene pool that allow for survival are beneficial mutations, it is accurate that traits that allow for survival are by definition beneficial. However, this is many steps removed from declaring that those traits or the genes that code for them are the result of some addition of genetic information by mutations. In other words, the genes for all of those traits are probably already there in the population, just as any roomful of people has the genes for brown eyes, blue eyes, and green eyes.
Because as we know, bearded dragons definitely have the genetic traits which allow, count them, 2 separate heads. And if those heads just happen to help it hunt and eat better and just happen to allow it to mate more, that's not evolution. It just happens. And God help you if you think for 1 second that that's a mutation, because it clearly is not.
To see that a particular trait in a particular environment may be more or less helpful to the survival may be natural selection, but it is not evolution. What he seems to be doing, and this is just my interpretation, is reading his evolutionary assumptions back into the unobserved past of this population to imagine that new genes that did not previously exist came into being via mutations, and being beneficial, helped those individuals survive. But that means that the observational data is variations in a population, and he is forced to assume that in the unobserved past, mutations occurred which created that genetic information for those beneficial traits. But this is merely using one's faith in evolutionism,
and I think that's going to be the title of this video, Evolutionism,
as evidence for evolution. Natural selection is a purely subtractive process. It cannot make new genes or alleles, it only removes them.
Please do not make me put up the bearded dragon picture again. It's starting to get old and I cannot be damned to look for more pictures.
Also, the requirements of evolution is not merely that an allele is beneficial, but that new genetic information which did not previously exist comes into being.
Now, usually as a point of rule, I don't go out of my way to use the dictionary as a way to prove a point, but here it makes sense. You're sitting here saying that the definition of the word evolution is the adding of information and all that. As you can see by the definitions I just supplied to you via 3 different websites, that is in case not the definition of the word evolution. Evolution, in fact, means the change of a species over time, as in to make it distinct, as in to make it more diverse, to allow it to survive in different environments better than it previously could.
In a given environment, a loss of genetic information can be beneficial. For example, on windy islands there are flightless beetles. It is believed that these bugs descended from beetles that could fly. The loss of functional wings was beneficial because the flying beetles would be blown off the island into the ocean. The flightless beetles thus had an easier time of surviving, but showing that a mutation which causes a loss of functional wings, which is beneficial on the island.
Thank you, Mr. Orange, for proving my point a little bit there. Yes, losing the wings definitely helped this beetle survive better on this island. Evolution. You're the one who sat there and said people who believe in evolution deny facts. So are you just going to deny that you said this, or are we just going to keep moving on?
Is the exact opposite of what evolution needs to explain. It needs to explain how those genes that code for functional wings came into being, not how they were lost. I hope this is of some help. God bless you, Aiden, and remember, Jesus loves you.
Thank you for the fun video again, Mr. Orange. As you guys can tell, this is probably the video that I've put the most work into so far. Hopefully I'll be able to keep up this kind of quality and get better as things go along. Well, this has been it for me, Ken out, and I'll see you in the next video.